Last night, America tuned into the spectacle when Alex Jones returned to the Joe Rogan Experience. And finally, there was a sequel that was better than the original. Rogan and Jones apparently settled whatever differences they had, and I guess Jones no longer thinks that Rogan is a sneaky snake. And boy, am I glad they did, because what we got was the most entertaining 5 hours I think I've ever experienced. I think that we got a deeper dive into the meme that came out of the last Alex Jones appearance on JRE, the whole interdimensional child molesters thing. He put some meat on the bones to that theory, and I have to say, Alex Jones is crazier than I ever thought he was. What made this episode so interesting was that Rogan was able to slow down Jones enough to where he could actually explain what he's thinking, and he actually came up with some kind of coherent, kooky idea, but it was sort of a bit more measured and actually reasoned in a sort of a David Icke fashion. David Icke, if you're not familiar, is another crazy person, but he's known for writing these massive, like 800-page books about why the lizard people control us, with lots of evidence and things and backing up his theories. And Rogan gave Jones a chance to really lay out a similar case last night. Of course, Jones is not convinced that we're run by lizard people, but rather by little elves. I'll get to that later, though. First, they covered the Sandy Hook controversy, which is originally why Rogan was upset with Jones. If you may recall, Jones doesn't believe, or is accused of not believing that Sandy Hook happened. Jones is accused of denying that the Sandy Hook shooting ever happened, or the kids died, and calling them child actors, and he's also accused of sending his fans after people to harass their families and things. Jones denies that now, and apparently Rogan believes him. I don't know enough about the controversy to know whether Jones is telling the truth or not, but essentially he says that at the time he had said that it was possible that Sandy Hook was a false flag because, of course, things like Operation Northwoods exist. And Operation Northwoods, for those of you who are not familiar, was a plot by I believe, the Pentagon, not the CIA. The government would stage false flag attacks against Americans in order to further the government's ends, whether that was blowing up an airliner and blaming it on Cuba, or actually, also committing mass shootings and then blaming them on various terrorists and things. And essentially Northwoods would let the government, was a comprehensive plan of false flags. And he's saying, well, considering that the government planned this before, it wouldn't be shocking if it turned out Sandy Hook was also the case. That was also the case in Sandy Hook. Now, apparently, Jones says he no longer believes this. He just thought it was a possibility. Never said for sure. Again, I don't know. Take what you will from that. But the real fun got started after that, when Jones said that the real political battle in America is between the CIA and NASA. Yes, you heard that right. The CIA and NASA. Apparently, the CIA, Jones argues, was set up by the British Empire after World War II, in which the British understood that they were basically bankrupt and couldn't maintain their empire anymore, so they wanted to merge with the United States. So the CIA was really a child of the British and American elite, which was supposed to guide greater Anglo-Saxon ends. So then NASA, if you're saying, well, if the CIA was set up by the British Empire, well, then what does that make NASA? Well, of course, NASA is run by the Nazis. Apparently, Jones argues that, you have Operation Paperclip after World War II, and the U.S. brought in all these Nazi scientists, and all these Nazi scientists wanted to continue their plans for world domination in the U.S., and so they set up NASA, and NASA is competing with the CIA, which is sort of, it's two schools of thought. They're no longer, physically, or they're no longer literally Nazis and British people, but they're people following the Nazi or British doctrine within those organizations. And also, apparently, we learned that Alex Jones's dad was a CIA dentist, from what I understand. He kept talking about how his dad was a dentist and worked with all these guys, and if the director of the CIA needed a root canal, his dad was the one that did it, so I guess he was the private dentist of the CIA. Not sure how that would make him privy to all these sorts of secrets, but apparently it did. Guess he also said that his dad was offered to do root canals for cyborgs and things. Now, I think the real nugget out of this whole 5-hour interview was when they talked about psychedelics, because that seemed to me to be the main theme here, running through the whole episode. Psychedelics, apparently, according to Jones, are a way of removing filters from our vision so that we can see into past the third dimension and into other dimensions. His argument is that when you take psychedelic drugs, you're not the images you're seeing in front of you, the crazy, acid trip stuff, is not coming from your head, but rather the psychedelic drug is removing filters from your vision, and you're seeing things that are always there, but things that humans normally wouldn't see. And his evidence for this is that when people take psychedelics in groups, I forget the specific one, he said there was a specific psychedelic drug. It wasn't DMT or acid, it was or LSD. It was something I can't remember. But he kept going back to this event in Costa Rica, where 43 people were sitting in a forest and they all took the same drug, and then they all had the same hallucinations. And he's saying, well, that's proof that they're all hallucinating in the same way. And so therefore it's not coming from their head, or else they would all be seeing different things. That was his case. And so, according to Jones, the elite globalists that he's fighting take these drugs in order to communicate with other dimensions so that they can gain greater knowledge of the universe. And apparently, according to Jones, that when you take these psychedelic drugs, you can come into contact with both evil and good beings. The evil beings, of course, the Elves, as he called them, the Clockwork Elves, and then the good beings are God and his angels. And so the problem with our elite, from Jones's perspective, is that it's much easier to contact the Clockwork Elves, and so the elite have been getting information from the Clockwork Elves, but the Clockwork Elves ask them to do evil deeds in exchange for information. And the elite would rather commit these evil acts rather than go through the trouble of trying to contact the angels to get sort of, I guess, holy information from God. This apparently, according to Jones, explains why there's been human sacrifice throughout human history, and why you have these prehistoric, or not prehistoric. This would be why you have these ancient religions, like what the Mayans had in Mesoamerica, to where they would sacrifice humans by the thousands and just kill lots of people, is because the priests would take the high priest would take these psychedelic drugs, and they would meet with the Clockwork Elves, and the Elves would tell them, we'll give you great power if you kill all these people or whatever. And so they have to sacrifice people to the Elves so that the Elves will give them information that this has been going on for all of human history. So essentially the elites want to break out of the third dimension and into the greater dimensions, the fourth, fifth, and sixth, and up through, I think he said there were 8 known, but he said that we can't know for sure. It was pretty mind-blowing, but not in a informative sense. This interview was insane, and I've just about distilled most of the important parts for you, so if you're intrigued, go ahead and watch the full 5 hours. It was very entertaining, I assure you. Eddie Bravo was also there. I didn't even get into anything he said. But hey, if all that sounds nuts and you have no interest in it, well, I just saved you 5 hours, because I watched the whole thing yesterday, and that's what we got out of it. I guess like this video, please, if you've made it this far, and definitely subscribe, because I will not be talking about Alex Jones tomorrow. I would be talking about, important news, but hey, I think that this is a major cultural event when Alex Jones returns to the Joe Rogan Experience. Hey, leave your comments below on what you thought of Joe and Alex reuniting, and I'll see you all tomorrow.